Hi everyone, so good to see you. It's so exciting this morning to have with me two special guests, and you might recognise them. I've got Jocelyn and Marge with me, and I'm so looking forward to what they're going to share. They've got some amazing stories and testimonies of their life. They're two people I think of who are amazing examples, and I just want to pick their brains this morning. Welcome, Jocelyn and Marge.
Hi,
thank you.
It's good to see you. How have you survived lockdown? Have you missed the KFC?
Not at all, not me.
It's greasy, Tim. It's
I know it's greasy, I know.
No.
But it's great to have you here, and as you know, we're doing a series, and I want to ask you guys some questions about how you've grown in your lives. Because I look at you two and I go, man, you guys, you've got stories to tell, and your examples to me, you're always so encouraging. And I just want to ask you a few questions about how things began and then how things progressed, and in your lives. And so I just want to start off asking you, what was that spark that ignited, the Lord in your life?
Well, I was brought up in a strong Christian family, a loving family, and we always went to church every Sunday, Baptist people, good Baptist people. Yeah. And at the age of 12, I responded to an altar call, and I can remember that day so clearly. I gave my heart to the Lord. But as time went on, and especially when I got into my teenage years, even though I still went to church and Bible class, I learned all about God, but there was no way my life was totally surrendered to God. I mean, He just had a little part of my life, and I wasn't that interested. So at 19, when I decided to go overseas for a year, I was just full of questions. Just because I was brought up in a Baptist home and always went to church, is that really right? I mean, what makes that really right? I had all these questions. Is God really real? I kind of knew He was, but I had to have an experience for myself because, I'd just gone along with it because Mum and Dad were so heavily involved in the church. So in that year, I was determined. We went around Australia, and in a period of time, my sister joined me, and I went with a friend. I was determined to just live the wildlife and find out what was really out there, what I was missing, and I had to make a choice. I was conscious I was having a choice.
Yep.
And I tried to be a wild child and really live it up, but I knew that my mother was on her knees every day praying for me. I just had that sense, that God had me. And, anyway, by the time we came home in our mini skirts and our dangling earrings, I had a feeling, I really wanted an encounter with God, but I didn't find Him on that trip around. Yeah. While I was away, Mum and Dad left the Baptist church and started to go to a Pentecostal church. So they said, for our sakes, would you come to the church? Everyone was so warm and so friendly. It irritated me because I was not in a good place. I found it quite irritating, to tell you the truth. Anyway, they had a visiting speaker, and Mum said, please, would you come? So Margaret and I said, okay, we would go along. And it was just my time to have an encounter with God. I can't tell you what He preached, but God just came. There was just such an anointing. I couldn't wait to get up to the altar call, and I just fell to the floor, and I spoke in tongues. It was just an amazing experience. And Tim, that was it for me, 20 years, And I was just on fire for God. I just couldn't believe at last I'd found peace, because I was quite insecure, especially in my teenage years. Do you know why? Because I really struggled at school. I found learning so difficult. I couldn't focus, and the worst thing is I just couldn't remember things. And in exam time, my mind would just go blank. So I always felt like I wasn't good enough, and I was a bit of a failure. And I had really low self-esteem. Well, God met me and all that lifted off my life. And I was like a new person. I had such joy and peace and hope. And the Bible, for the first time, it just started to
Came
live.
alive.
So for me, that was the beginning
That's
of my
amazing.
adventures
It's
in God.
absolutely
Yeah.
amazing.
I have to say my dad. I was only about 10, 11, and my dad and mum were just like any other parents. They would go to parties and have people around and stuff like that. But then my uncle started to talk to Dad about God. And so he actually went to church, I think, a few times with my uncle. And then one day, I remember this clearly, I went to church with my two younger brothers. I was only about 11. And it was a Pentecostal church, I was telling you before, in Khyber Pass in Auckland. And it was an apostolic church. And anyway, man preached and he did an altar call. And so my dad he put up his hand. And I looked at my dad and I went, yeah, I'll do it too. So I went up there and it was amazing. And we got baptised together. And that was in, I can't remember, 1959 or something. Similar story to Jocelyn. I sort of wasn't really discipled as such, but my dad always used to pray for us. He was like first generation born again. He would pray for us, tell us Bible stories, and so I lived in a house that was light and dark and clashing all the time. So I was a bit confused myself, trying to be good because I knew I'd accepted Christ, but it didn't work. No. And so, years later, it was 1994, I'd been through one marriage that lasted 10 years, and I got 3 beautiful daughters from that, and I still didn't know God, I was still wild. And then about 1994, that's right, my daughter came from Australia and she'd just given her life to the Lord, Jodie. And so one Sunday she said to me, because Trevor was away working a lot, and one Sunday she said to me, Mum, can I borrow your car? I said, what for? And she says, I want to go to church. I said, there's no churches around here, they're miles away. And she said, oh, please. And I didn't know how she could drive or how good she was. I said, I don't know about that. And she said, will you take me? And I said, right, okay. And she said, I'm going to church, I'm going to, and I said, yeah. I said, I've tried everything else, what the heck? So I went with her. And like Jocelyn, when we walked through the doors, I hadn't seen this before. There were words up on a projector in the corner. People had their hands up. But you felt like on the inside there was such a battle. There were things screaming in me and saying, get out of here, get out of here. Right. And my body wanted to run, but
it was a battle.
It was a battle. It was so real and so strong. Get out of here. And I thought, oh, this is weird. I don't know what it's about. Look at these people who have got their hands up and they're saying funny things. And it was strange, but then I couldn't. I was locked there. I just felt there was a battle. I could feel peace and wow, this actually feels pretty good. So long story short, we sat down with my daughter and she's right into it. She's a baby Christian. And the worship started and I started. The tears just rolled down my face. I was a mess. I was asking her for handkerchiefs. I was just sitting there. Everything convicted me, what he was saying, the overhead and everything. And at the end, people met up with us, and invited us for lunch. I thought, this is strange. These people don't even know us.
Wow, awesome.
So this particular Chinese couple took us home for lunch. And after that, I've gone a little bit blank, sorry. After that, we went back a second and third time. And then the third time, I think it was, I was the same. Every time I was a mess. I couldn't do anything. I was just a mess. And he did an altar call, the pastor, and the words he said were just going straight in like this, and it was like, oh, that's me. Wow. And so I'm a mess, and Jodie says, Mum, want to go up? And I said, no. I pushed her hand away. Not even a minute later, I said, come with me. So she came with me. I gave my heart to the Lord. And I remember a man came up and he said to me, this is for you, 1 John 1:9, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. He gave me that word at the altar and I'm still blubbing. And then something evil came out of me, I won't go there, but the band got louder and louder, and I got set free, and it felt like someone had taken the chassis of a car off my shoulders.
Wow.
It was like, and I just felt so light. And I've never looked back. We lived in the country, and I couldn't get to church for a couple of years, but that's another story.
That's amazing. So what has it been, what's caused the most growth in your life, would you say? If I talk to you, what circumstances or what things, how has God helped you grow?
So Tim, it's not just one thing. It's life. It's all sorts of circumstances that has happened in my life. But I have to mention probably the most dominant one was, Brian and I got married a year later when I was 21. I mean, he loved the Lord, and we just loved each other. We just loved the Lord, and we wanted to serve the Lord with all of our hearts.
Yes.
And the Lord opened the door for us to go over to we had 2 boys.
Yeah.
And then we got called to the Philippines to help a couple from World Outreach. We went up to Baguio. So I'm not going to go into all that, but anyway, that was the most wonderful, fruitful time.
Yes.
And I think once a missionary, always a missionary.
Yeah.
You just get, anyway, when we came back after 3 years, Brian wasn't well, and it's a long story, but they discovered he had bowel cancer, and he lived 1 year, and then he passed away. And I remember he was only 32, Tim, and I thought, but Lord, we had our whole lives ahead of us. We were going to go back to the Philippines, and I just couldn't understand. I thought, Lord, you've made a mistake. You should have taken me, because he was the one that everyone loved, and he was the one that had the ministry. And but there's a verse here. It says in Psalm 34:18, "When you are broken-hearted, I am close to you." And I just felt God's presence and comfort. I just can't explain how he just carried me through that time. He was just so real to me. And I remember saying to the Lord, I don't want Brian's life to be in vain. I want to live my best life, Lord. I want to live my best life for both of us. I want to live a life in victory with purpose, and I just want to totally surrender my life, and I just want my life to count for whatever purpose you've got for me. I don't understand, but Lord, I'm going to hold your hand. I am just, it was devastating. And, I just want to encourage everyone that, God, we don't always understand, but God sees the big picture. He sees things in the light of eternity, and one day we will understand his purposes, even though we don't now. And I went on, and I married Graham, and we had 2 more children. And look, we've had our ups and downs, but we've been so blessed. I am blessed of God. I'm sure you can say the same, Marge. But do you know what? I have learned so much. I have learned so much. I'm a different person now, and it's been a process of getting into the Word. The Word's it's not just a book, but it's a life. And I think as we press in and diligently seek God and read his Word, we understand more about God and his love and his purpose and his peace and what he's got to offer us. And do you know, there's 7,000 promises in the Word of God, and there's no excuse for us not to live a life in victory with purpose. And I've just had to cast myself on him and just say, Lord, just keep on teaching me. And I think every time there's a trial, I just press into God, press into God, press into God. And I think, looking back, if my life with Brian, if it was just perfect and rosy and nothing ever happened, I wouldn't be the person I am today. There would
No.
be no growth.
That's
because,
right.
every time there's a challenge or
Yeah.
a trial, I've had to dig deeper and dig deeper.
Yeah.
I found a couple of keys, and that is, I've learnt to love God for who He is, not for what He does. And I love Him regardless. And I've just learned to fix my eyes on the Lord. So, nothing will shake me from
Beautiful.
my relationship with the Lord.
Yeah.
And His word just
Yep.
keeps me now. I'm going a bit blank now. His
That's
His word has just sustained me and kept me, and I love Him more today than I ever have. And trust is a big thing. His word says trust with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. I've learned to trust Him completely with my life, even though I don't understand.
Yep.
I love Him
Yep.
and I trust Him.
Yep.
And
Awesome.
also praise. I found
Yes.
praise to be a huge
Right.
key in my life.
Right.
I think praise releases something from the heart of God.
Yeah.
And I think no matter what, we just need to come into His presence with praise on our lips.
Yeah.
For me, the biggest trial would be when I lost Trev, because our stories are quite similar.
Yes.
We're
But-
twins,
Well, I
We're
didn't
twins.
think about that when I asked you, brother. I didn't think about that factor, but that's quite true.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and so he came from a family of atheists, but when he passed, I had prayed since I became born again for 20 odd years,
Wow.
and I wasn't going to give up. And
No.
the biggest blessing before the trials came, the biggest blessing that he was on a hospital bed about to be given ketamine,
Yes.
and I just said to him, Trevor, you've been thinking about the Lord, because we'd already been told that wasn't looking good.
No.
So, and I led him through a prayer, and he accepted it.
That's
and
right.
and he got hold of his family, and he said, guess what? Oh, I'm in the club. That's what he said, I'm in the club. This is a family of atheists. And they were saying, what the heck are you talking about? And he says, I've given my heart to Jesus, and he changed. And it was only like a few
completely
days.
changed.
Few days
I
before
remember.
he went. But then that's when things hit the fan.
Yeah.
I went through bankruptcy. I went through this is in 3 years, two quite major ops, but scheduled ops.
Yes.
But in the middle was an unplanned op. I had a twisted gut.
Yeah.
And it was an emergency, and it started at 4 in the morning, and I was in theatre at 1 o'clock.
Yep.
And they took out a big piece and everything. But for me, my whole focus was God. God, help me! And I just kept reaching out.
You
to
dug
him.
in.
I dug in because I knew he was my only hope. I was either going to sink or rise, and I was quite noisy in hospital one part there, but at the same time, I didn't care. I was yelling out, Jesus!
That's amazing.
And this
That's amazing.
This is an outpatient, and everyone could hear. I did not care because the pain was so bad.
Yeah.
And I trusted him to bring me through.
Come on.
And he did. And he did. And I thought to myself, wow, God, you're amazing. I can do anything. Don't like talking in front of cameras, but I can do anything.
You're doing great.
Anything you want me to.
That is amazing.
Because I can't do it without you. I can do nothing without you.
Beautiful.
So this time in lockdown, briefly, it's been a time of pressing in. I've had my nose stuck in my Bible, and I've been praying and really seeking God and thanking Him that He's brought us thus far, and all the glory, all the praise to God. And I pray that it's an encouragement, what people hear from our lives, because they wouldn't really want to know us back then, but He has changed us completely. The Bible says it's no longer I that lives,
That's right.
Christ that lives in me. So we need to be mindful of that. It's no longer me or you, it's Jesus.
Yes.
And He's on the inside. And that's the
That's
Spirit
right.
of God that is
The
on the
changes.
earth that will, bring change.
So the party girl now is...
Party girl is pray girl.
The prayer girl, that's right. And
Praise girl.
you've got that purpose. How do you discover God's, will for you? You encountered the Lord, you've grown through those difficult seasons. How did you discover that passion in your heart?
I just don't know. I think, when you go through a lot, myself, God just gave me such a heart for people. I just love people.
Yeah.
Especially, I love to get alongside people and encourage them, because when you've been through a lot yourself and proved God and know God's love and His assurance and what He can do and who He is, it just is a natural thing to want to share it. It's not something I sat down and thought about. God just started to use me in a way of reaching people, and He would lay people on my heart. And like Tim, just before I knew it, I mean, suddenly you might say, I've got a ministry. I just never thought of it that way. I just started doing and sharing. Yeah. And God would just fill my heart with love for people, and I just wanted to see them encouraged. I just wanted to see them free and know what I know and what I've learned.
Well, my passion has always been prayer and to know God. And during the lockdown, of course, I've had that time, and I feel like I've come back. It started off really hard. Things went on there, but I've come out of that. And I would say I've tried practically every ministry. I've done Bible schools, I've done a lot. Yeah. And the same heart, you care for people and you want people to know the God that you know, and however that looks. And God does lead us by His Spirit. Like randomly, you might be walking down the street and someone will be there and He'll say, talk to that man, or something like that. So you go up there and say, hi, how are you?
That's awesome.
And then he gives, there was just for a quick example, there was a Hare Krishna. Yeah. And I'm walking past and he's trying to sell his books. And God said to me, go and talk to that man.
Great.
And I thought, hi.
Great.
And then we started talking, and he was so absorbed by what I was saying. And then I said, no, I don't need your books. I've got a book, a great book. It's called the Bible. And I just ended up, I cannot remember what I said, but my mouth just talks him. And I even shared with him about being saved and everything like that. And he's done that many times, and several times with people that are ready to go. Like, I won't name names, but there are people, and God's just put in my heart, go and see them. So even if I don't want to, I will still go. And then I'm amazed at the end of it, because you end up sharing the gospel and leading them to Christ. So apart from, and you have the same heart, you love everybody and you want everybody to be saved. And so one of my big things with that is prayer. Come on. Whatever I see or hear, I'm in there in prayer. And then God will just lead and guide. And I love fellowship with other Christians, and because we're on the same page.
We're on the same page.
We've got the same God. And the same purpose.
It's amazing. Have you got any final shots, any parting words, of anything that could be just that's an encouragement?
I would say that my life and what God has done in my life shows me that He is real. And even though we can't see Him now, one day we will all see Him. His word is true. There's a lot of religions out there, but there's only one way to God, and that's Jesus Christ is the doorway. And He's already done, He's already made the sacrifice for all humanity, for whomsoever will believe and receive Him. And I would just briefly explain what my life was like. I've literally come out of the pit into the light. And God wants that for everyone, children, teenagers, old people, it doesn't matter. Even people on their last moments on earth, He wants them to know.
I remember when I was a teenager, before I'd come to that place, I thought, I don't want to totally surrender to God, because I don't want to give up. I don't want to give up. And you think that to become a Christian, you have to give up, but you get so much more.
Come on.
You
give up the stuff you don't need for the stuff that you actually do need.
Yes, I mean that peace that passes all understanding, and that joy, the joy of the Lord, it's just so worthwhile. I recommend the Christian life to everyone.